I call this humanity-centered design, and it has 5 simple principles. But the main one is focus upon people.
Welcome once again to Techsculptics. Our guest today is an iconic guest, one that has transformed or revolutionized the way we design, ensuring that we design for humanity, ensuring that we design for people and not just design for business or design for what we feel. Now, Don Norman is a world-renowned design thinker, widely celebrated for his groundbreaking contributions to human-centered design and cognitive science. He is the author of the iconic book, The Design of Everyday Things, which revolutionized how we understand usability and user experience. With a rich career spanning academia and industry, Don has served as the vice president of Apple, co-founded the Nelson Norman Group, one of the most influential UX consulting firms in the world, and was the founding director of the Design Lab at University of California, San Diego. In what he humorously calls his fifth retirement, Don is far from slowing down. He is actively involved in running the Don Norman Design Award and Summit, DNDA, a charity dedicated to advancing humanities-centered design among early career professionals, educational groups, and beyond. His recent focus goes beyond traditional human-centered design approaches to embrace broader concerns, including environmental sustainability, cultural diversity, and overall quality of life. His latest book, Design for a Better World: Meaningful, Sustainable, Humanity-Centered, dives into these ideas, advocating for a future where design solutions not only serve individuals, but also create a positive impact on the planet and society as a whole. Don's influence extends to his role as a member of the National Academy of Engineering and his continued effort to inspire the next generation of designers. Join me as I welcome the iconic Professor Don Norman, our tech sculptor for today.
To design, we're making waves. Blockchain VR is the digital craze. Every podcast, every show we bring, you're part of the future. Let's do this thing.
I must tell you, Don is an iconic individual and has done so much in the world of design and has been able to draw humanity into design and whatever we use. His book, The Design of Everyday Things, is iconic and is in the Smithsonian Institute in the United States. So welcome, Don, to Techsculptics. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
Gee, I don't know who you're talking about. Okay, here I am. An icon. I'm an icon. Does that mean I should
Oh!
be iconic? I mean, I don't feel like an icon.
Oh, you are an icon, Don. You are an icon, really.
What do you want to talk about?
I read your book. That was the first encounter I had about you when I read your book. So I just want to get into your world, as in what inspired you to write the book, The Design of Everyday Things?
The design of everyday things happened because I was still an academic at the time, and I took a sabbatical leave and I went to England. And in England, I could not work the doors, the light switches, the water faucets or water taps. And I had so much trouble And I said, why is this so badly designed? And I did not intend to write a book, but I sat down and wrote this book, which I said, this is crazy, that all around the world we have these very simple things like doors. Why does it take why do you need a manual to work a door? Shouldn't you just know that you push a door, and it's easy to know you push a door. Suppose you didn't have anything on the door except a flat plate. Well, what could you do with a flat plate? Nothing you can do except push. You don't need a sign saying push. And so I just said there are some fundamental principles that designers do not seem to know about to make it easy to learn to use even simple things, let alone complicated things. So when you talk about complex things, the same principles are there. And so I simply sat down and wrote the book. And that changed my life, because before that, I was a scientist. And that was the beginning of my becoming a designer.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. That's really awesome. So I would go on there, and like, your work has influenced designers globally, all over the world. You know, I'm in Nigeria and in West Africa. And you know, your work influenced designers all over the world. And I want to ask, what would you give, or what advice would you give to aspiring designers in Africa who want to create impactful and culturally relevant designs?
When I travel and people ask me, what should our country do to be, what is the unique kind of design that our country should do? I refuse to answer. Why? Because one of the problems with the world is colonialism, where the Western powers, especially Europe and the United States, would go around the world and take over countries and tell the people in the country how they should live. That's not good. And as a designer, I do not want to be a colonialist. I do not want to tell you what you should do. It has to come from you. And especially if you ask about Africa, well, Africa is how many countries? Many, many different countries. Yeah. West Africa is different than East Africa. Northern Africa is different than Southern Africa. And so it's up to the people who live there to decide what it is they should do. But what I want to encourage you is throw away Western values. But in fact, what are the values of your culture? And design to be appropriate. Now, this does not mean going back hundreds and hundreds of years to what the indigenous tribes and people in the country used, because there have been many changes in the world since then. And so when you design, take advantage of the new knowledge we have and the new technologies that allow things to happen. But you must design it for yourself. Years ago, I was at a conference in Hong Kong, and there were some Mexican students there, and they were going to go back to Mexico and be designers. And they asked me, they wanted to do Mexican design. And what should they do to do Mexican design? And here's the answer I gave them, and it's the answer I will give you. I said, go back and do whatever you want to do, but be really good at it. Make it something that really works where you are living and with the people in your country. And as you become successful, the work that you do will be called Mexican design. So if you want to do African design or Nigerian design, work in your own country and do a great job that fits the people who live there, and that will be called Nigerian or African design. Nigerian or Kenyan or South Africa or Morocco. I mean, you have a lot of different cultures in Africa. But remember that it was the countries are artificial. The King of Belgium a few hundred years ago, or less than that, had a conference in Europe did not invite anybody from Africa, but the Europeans sat down and they decided where the country should be in Africa and which European country would own that country. And that was wrong and that was evil.
I want to just ask a question that has to do with the title of your book. Like the lesson you stated on your book that you learned in the change of the name, because the name was supposed to be the psychology of everyday things, then you later had to change it to the design of everyday things based on the advice from your editor or something. So you stated how you learned firsthand the error that most or many designers do. So what was that about?
Well, that's because I thought that the psychology of everyday things, everyday life, was a cute title, because psychology of everyday things is P-O-E-T, the word poet.
Poet, yeah.
And but I soon learned that the point is not to design for myself. And I designed the title because I thought it was clever, and my friends thought it was clever. But the question is, when somebody saw a book with that title, would they be interested in it? And the answer was no, because people who knew psychology were not interested in design. And people who knew design would never think of looking in a psychology section of a bookstore. And so why not? It was a book about design. Why not call it design? And so it emphasized to me how important it was to understand the people that you are designing for. Designers are not like artists. Artists can express their own views, their own opinions, but designers are designing for other people. And so we must therefore understand the people we are designing for. And when it's a different culture, like in Africa, we should not design for them, but rather we should help them. We should be assistants, so that it is designed by the people, for the people, with the people, not by an outside country, not by designers. Well, it should be designed by designers, but designers from the culture.
Yeah. Wow, this is really profound and it's deep, because it's really interesting that you keep focusing on and also emphasizing that we design for us, like the people. And it's very important that we realize that design is not just for the people. Like when I was reading the book, The Design of Everyday Things, one thing that struck me was you keep emphasizing that most times designers always are excited about designing stuff. Sometimes they want to design for themselves and forget that the users or the people are the people they are supposed to be designing for. So it's very interesting that you keep focusing on that word, even as it relates to even us in Africa, that we should own our culture, design for the culture, for the people, for those that are, or the design or the equipment or the tool is meant for. And you shared also your experience with us about how you were on sabbatical and how you found it difficult to use certain things and all this. I was so excited then when I was reading the book, and I was just laughing when I was reading that portion of the book where you talked about where you wanted to use the preset and all those, and it was so difficult to use and all that. So it's really interesting. So I read somewhere, someone wrote something, I can't really remember where, but someone said you are like the father of design and design thinking or something, and it's so interesting, and it's true, because you just keep saying these things because you are concerned about the people. So I want to ask, I know it's interesting, but I want to also ask something about the principle of human-centered design. In places like Africa where resources can be limited, what are some of the principles of human-centered design that you believe are most critical for designers generally?
Well, there are two things I want to say. One of them is that if you were talking about this book is wrong. So it's very important to know why I say that this book, which is, as you say, iconic, why it is wrong. There is nothing wrong in the book. Everything in the book I believe in and I still teach today. What's wrong is what is not in the book. And so my new book, which you mentioned, I call this humanity-centered design. So it's what we must do is we must think about the world. So when we design, look, today to make these wonderful, beautiful things, we destroy the earth. We mine and destroy and corrupt and pollute the earth. And then when we manufacture, we also pollute the air and the water and the land. And we also destroy cultures by the colonization by designers. And in digital products, people say, oh, digital doesn't destroy the earth. Yes, it does, because all digital products work on physical products.
Yeah.
And some of the new ones use a tremendous amount of energy. And the energy comes from where? It comes from coal and oil, plants that pollute the air. And so I call this humanity-centered design. And it has 5 simple principles. But the main one is focus upon people. And second, make sure that we also think about the system in which we live, the system that is called the world. And so, although we are designing for people, we should not destroy, well, the environment. And we must therefore consider all living things, all animals, but all plants, because plants are essential to human survival. And we must consider the air and the water and the land. And that's a second principle, is think about the system. And the other principle is that we're dealing with people, and therefore we are almost always wrong. And the way you have to design, therefore, is to test. As you are designing, take your ideas and test them out on the people that you are designing for. And that will show you that, oh, people have all sorts of ways of doing things you never thought of. They're very creative. And you have, and it won't work unless you've actually managed to think about all the different ways people will use the things you are designing. And then the last principle is that when we go into a culture, we should be working with the people who live there. And in many ways, if we're doing something for society, like clean air, water, public health, education, farming, it should come from the people. So it has to be designed by and with the people. So those are the principles. Those are actually, they're fairly simple to understand, but difficult to do. So that's why we need professional assistance. But, let me just tell you what's wrong with the world. Lots of people in the world see there are problems. And so lots of organizations send out the foreign aid, and we send out experts to a location who try to understand what is happening in the place. And they come back and write a wonderful report. Here's what needs to be done. And then they get a lot of money, go and do it. And it always fails, because the experts understand the problem, but they don't understand the people. And unless you understand the people, the solution will not work. And on top of that, people don't accept it when somebody says, here's what's good for you. Nobody likes it when some outsider comes in and says, you have to change what you're doing and here's what you should do. No. The idea should come from the people, as I've said before. So that's a very important principle. And when we do when we do things in other countries, when I go into another country, I have to be humble and I have to watch and talk to the people and make friends with the people and see what they are already doing. They already know their problems. I don't have to tell them what their problems are, but they may need help in developing solutions. So if the educational system is bad or transportation is bad, that often requires help from government and resources, more resources than individuals have.
Yeah.
And that's where they need help.
That's quite interesting. The thing is, you mentioned technology when you were talking, and I want to also say, as technology continues to evolve, and how do you see the role of design changing, or human-centered design, as it relates to AI and automation?
Well, but before we get to AI, let's just look at buildings. Because the technological countries of the world, which today we call the Western or the Northern countries, not by geography, but basically influenced by Europe, so that Australia is a European country in that sense. The United States also. We have lots of access to electricity and power, and so we build buildings we don't take into consideration the temperature, the climate. We just build a building, put lots of windows in it, even in a hot area, because we have good air conditioning. And we're saying with our medical devices, but when we go to another country with does not have good medical and hospitals, we give them Western equipment that requires air conditioning and clean water.
Yeah.
And all sorts of things that they don't have. And finally, we devise things that we give to countries where they can't repair them. And so, quite often what you have to do is build things that are simple, maybe that don't require all of this technology. In the old days, we used to build buildings where we made sure in hot countries that they did not have so many windows, or the windows always had a balcony in front of it, so the window was in the shade. And we used thick walls so that in hot countries, the walls kept the heat out, and in cold countries, it kept the heat inside the rooms. And we've lost all that. In the Middle East, we used to build what's called wind towers. So the building would have a central core where air would come in the bottom and hot air would rise to the top, which would automatically cause a breeze throughout the whole building. So no technology required at all. And so we're starting to realize, oh, that's very useful. We should build more buildings like that. So the solution to many of these problems means use less technology and use simpler technology that does not break all the time, and also that is easy to fix and repair. But today we've reached the point where technology is invisible.
Yeah.
In the days, everything was physical, and when something broke, you could look at it and you could see how things worked.
Absolutely.
But today it's all electronics, and it's all with computer chips, and you can't take them apart. And if you do take them apart, there's nothing that you can do, nothing that you can see and understand easily, and that's bad. It's wonderful sometimes to have the devices, but it's bad. As for artificial intelligence, well, in many ways, it's very useful. We're using it right now in our Zoom call. There's a lot that goes on. When the smartphones that are now all around the world have been good. They've improved communication, so people can talk to one another. It's good for farmers farmers now can find out where their produce should be delivered and what the prices are in different locations. Fishermen use it as they go out and they fish. They need to know which port to go back to, which is the port that needs the fish on that day, and what are the prices that are being sold for. They can find out with their telephones, their mobile phones, and but they don't have to be expensive. In the United States, they're very expensive. In Africa, they're much less expensive. And not only that, but the use of phones has changed not only the information flow, but also even payment systems. So I don't know about Nigeria, but in many countries, you can now pay with your phone. You don't need a bank account. You don't have to worry about carrying money with you. And that has been very, very valuable. So the technology can be good. And when you take a picture, the cameras, they're very small. And by themselves, they cannot take a good picture because they don't let enough light in. But artificial intelligence has made them make really good pictures. And so there's lots of good things from AI, but remember the A means artificial. And intelligence, they're not intelligent. So they're artificial. Now, the new types of AI are very interesting. I find them very valuable, but they're very young, and they are still. It will take us 5 or 10 years to understand the capabilities. There are people who think they're wonderful. There are people who think they are evil and will destroy the world.
Yeah.
We have other technologies already that can destroy the world and that are evil. Unfortunately, in the world, as long as history has been recorded, there have been wars. There have been wars in different countries. Africa today has many different wars, but across the world, there are many places that are fighting and warfare. And so much technology is developed for warfare. Some of the earliest technologies were developed for warfare. And so some of the AI is being developed for warfare. Now, AI is different than other technologies because it is not physical. It is invisible, and it is based on logic and rules, and it can make decisions all by itself. And that can be dangerous.
Totally agree with you. And for the money payment, like in Nigeria, we have that too. And you were speaking and you said something about the phones being more cheaper in Africa. It's so expensive right here, really. And like judging from Nigeria, where the exchange rate of the dollar to the naira is so high, so the things, the electronics and everything is so expensive. Just like buying things like ×3 from using the dollar to the naira, comparing the two together. So it's quite expensive. We think it's even cheaper on your end, you know. We think it's cheaper from your end.
But our phones are expensive for artificial reasons, and you can make much simpler phones today that are still powerful and less expensive. But I don't know Nigeria, so I cannot comment.
Yeah, so it means you have to come to Nigeria then to experience what we you know, because Nigeria is a very interesting country and it's the most populous black nation on earth and has one of the most industrious people you can ever think of in the world, like black people in Africa. And it also has its downside with a lot of stories that people hear about Nigeria and the negatives online. But I can assure you that Nigeria has one of the most industrious people around in the world, and hardworking too, and one of the happiest people too around. So I'm sure by some kind of, maybe very soon you'll be in Nigeria for D&D, I'm sure.
That would be nice, yes.
Yeah. So I also want to ask a question about the fact that, you know, human-centered design, as it were, like designing for humanity, because personally, my philosophy is every one of us as individual, we have a uniqueness, and we are in the world to serve that uniqueness to humanity. That's my personal belief, and I so strongly believe in the fact that each of us that have that uniqueness that we bring when it comes to working together collaboratively as a team and in whatever we do, and that's why we're in the world. And I'm so glad that you are mentioning the fact that we have to design for humanity, and we have to design for the people, the users, and it's very critical. So I want to ask a question about how does it relate to everyday things? Your like the first set you talked about, people that design these everyday things like day-to-day tools that people use at home and all those kind of things. How does the human-centered design thinking, like you mentioned that there is a lot of things wrong with the book, the Duet book, that's the design of everyday things, and now we're talking about the human-centered design. Like, how would you relate this everyday things, as you talked about in that book, to your new book now? How would you relate it to?
Well, I think they're related because the older book is correct about design principles. The new book says, but we have to think about more than just the design, but about the impact upon the world, which impacts people. Second, the new book, I point out that the economic systems of the world are crazy. The emphasis is on profit and short-term results, whereas what we need is an emphasis on quality of life, and we have to look at the long term, the future. And so those two things, emphasizing quality of life as the most important thing and taking a long-term point of view, those are not present in today's economic world. That the stock markets of the world, they look at profits measured in sometimes seconds or minutes.
Yeah.
And even companies only look the next month ahead, or 2 months or 3 months, what they call a quarter of the year. And we have to change that. So, in other words, to do good, I think we have to change much of the way the world works, which is very, very difficult. And
Yeah, of course, I agree.
many people will agree. I'm not the only person saying this. And I'm very pleased that in the book, I talk about all the work that is good work that's being done by so many different groups, because it's going to take many groups to change the world and make a difference. So one thing I've done is I have a charity in which I try to encourage people early in their career to do good for society. And it's wonderful. We had, in the first year, we had applications from 27 different nations, and some of them are wonderful. So what can people do? Well, better education. So we have in some countries where the government doesn't really provide education for everybody, local people have banded together to do their own teaching for the local people in their community. We had people in healthcare, people who were depressed, had mental disorders. The local people in the village would band around them and sing to them and make them feel good and give them comfort and give them support. And in some cases, they actually were able to cure the people simply by being helpful and friendly and always positive. And the same with clean water, the same with transportation, people banding together to solve these problems. And I've been extremely impressed by how many times people themselves can get themselves together. And sometimes it's use of technology. So in Ghana, one of the projects that we awarded an award to, what they did is they trained people in technology, because they trained people who had disabilities. For example, a person who had difficult to see, difficult vision. They trained them in the technology so they could build for themselves devices that improve their own lives. So gave them the training for simple technologies, but using everyday technology, their lives better. And that's really wonderful when people can solve their own problems. And so I'm trying to encourage people all around the world to do exactly this.
Wow. So I was actually saving these questions for later, but since you mentioned the issue, but before I go into that question, when you talk about economics, many businesses, when it comes to business, a lot of people just talk about profit, like you mentioned. They just want to make profit. Like they will think like, oh, yes, I'm designing or I'm producing for people, but my first point is I want to make profit. So anything that will make me not make profit, I want to put it aside and think about the business itself. They'll tell you, like most times when you encounter people and you're talking about certain things about how you can affect humanity and do stuff, they'll say, no, this is business. So what's the difference between where is the line? Where can you draw the line? Like this is business and this is humanity, you know?
No, no, I don't want to draw a line. That a business has an obligation to its customers, to the people who work for the business, and to the society where it is located, to do good for all of these people. Now, should a business make a profit? Yes, because a business has to stay in business. And so if it is not making money, it will go out of business. And therefore, it doesn't do it, even if it's a wonderful business, if it is not making money and it has to stop, that's bad. So every business should be bringing in enough money to keep going, or maybe even to hire more people. But that should not be that is not the primary goal of a business. It should be to serve people, to improve the quality of life, and to any money they make. Actually, some businesses do not pay employees very well, and or many Western companies go to places like Nigeria and say, "Oh, labor is less expensive here, so we will use you as our at low-paid people to do things for us." No, it's okay to go to a different country for manufacturing, but they have to be paid a wage that allows them to live a comfortable life.
Yeah.
So comfortable means that they don't have to worry every day if they have enough money for food or for transportation or to take care of their children properly, or even to occasionally have entertainment and a good meal. But that isn't against a business making a profit.
Yeah.
In fact, the better you treat people, often the better the company does.
Yeah.
So, but we have to change this emphasis on profit,
Yeah.
because today in many of the schools, especially the business schools, the entire emphasis is on profit.
Yeah.
And it should not be. Yes, you have to make a profit, but that's secondary.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I'm so glad that you touched that. Like there shouldn't be any disparity because really, yeah, using humans. Humans are the ones doing the work. Like I had a conversation and I was saying, even the AI, the technologies, and everything that comes up, they are all tools, and these tools are supposed to be used by humans. And I believe, like you mentioned, also, I don't think the AI or whatever technology we have are smarter than us because we created them. So, and we made them for our use, that we should be able to use them to make our lives better and to make the world a better place, like so to speak. So I agree with you totally that profit it shouldn't go above humanity.
That's right. Now,
Yeah.
they are, mind you, the technology can do things better than people. We use technologies to make ourselves stronger. We use them for doing construction, digging holes, digging ditches. They also make us smarter in a sense that a calculator, whenever I do arithmetic, I make errors. A calculator doesn't make errors.
Yeah.
And calculators can solve equations today. AI again. With artificial intelligence, you can put it in even an algebra equation or even a calculus equation, and it can solve it. But it can't think of it can't think of the problem in the first place. What people are good at is what's the problem, and knowing what arithmetic or algebra or calculus to use to solve the problem. That's what people are good at. Let machines solve the problem. That's okay. We use automobiles and buses and trains
Yeah.
to take longer distances than we could go without technology. That's good. It helps people. So I'm not against technology, but again, it has to be in a way that is useful for people. Now, it's also true that when we take a look at clothes used to be made by hand.
Yeah.
And when as machines developed in the 1700s and 1800s, that they could do actually create cloth and do a lot of the sewing automatically, people lost their jobs. And that's an unfortunate part of every time a new technique, a new method happens.
Yeah.
That it often replaces people, but it usually increases the number of jobs. And in the case of clothing, it made the cost of clothing much, much less expensive. So it was widely available all over the world. But we do have to realize that even good technologies that are good for society in general can be harmful to some people whose jobs are replaced. And we have to, but personally, I think the problem is right now the technology is designed by technologists, people who have studied in school technology. They study, they know mathematics, and they know about whatever field they're doing. In your case, chemistry, and in today's field, computer programming, and or mechanical engineering or civil engineering. But we don't study people. There's a big emphasis today on STEM education, which means science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I'm against that. I'm very well trained in STEM, but I also am well trained about people. STEM leaves out people. That's what's wrong with it. Nothing about people and humanity and history and ethics. And that must be part of the training of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really true. And I would go back to this Don Norman Design Awards and Summit. I'll just pick a question or two from there. Your DNDA had already recognized and supported designers in Ghana, Kenya, Botswana. So what advice would you give to inspire aspiring African designers who want to align with DNDA's mission and contribute to meaningful design solutions?
That means if you are a designer, you probably means you are educated. You're probably living in a better part of this town, and you may not see many people who have disadvantages and needs. So I recommend you go to the parts of the town where these people live, or go to the parts of the country where these people live. And every country has this problem. I can tell you the United States has many people who don't have homes and could really use assistance. And it's especially true in other nations. And then it's up to you to use your design skills to see how you can help the people. Mind you, not telling them what to do, but working with them to improve their lives, because you will find people there who fully understand the difficulties they face and even have good ideas, but they may not have the resources to accomplish them. And that's what you can do. You help them get the resources and help them get the knowledge they need, and also the support. And yeah, you can read up about the Don Norman Design Award. It's on the internet. And I think the internet is reasonably accessible, even in Nigeria or not. Yeah. And so
it is accessible, yes.
And there are lots of small groups around the world, and what you need to do is find them. Or if you are a designer, there's probably a design club or society or organization locally that you can talk to, and together you people can do some work. The other thing is to work with universities, because the university students love, they're really good resources. They really enjoy going out and doing good for other citizens. And so that's a good source of ideas, people, and also resources.
I'm also going to follow up with this question about your charity organization, still DNDA. DNDA has been making strides in recognizing design talents across Africa, like I mentioned earlier. Now, what inspired you to start this initiative, and what impact do you hope to achieve in regions like Africa?
Well, first of all, it's only been in existence 1 year.
Wow.
So we haven't had, so we're very pleased with what happened the first year, but we're just starting the second year now. And the first year we gave out awards in San Diego, California. In this year, 2025, we will give out the awards in Singapore. So at the end of each year, we have a big conference. We intend to have a conference where the awards are given, but more important, where other people working in these areas will come together and share their knowledge and experience. And because it's an international organization, we're planning that we should have a different city in the world every year. And so for 2025, it will be in Singapore. And for 2026, we don't know yet where it will be, but we already have interest from Switzerland and from India to hold the conference there.
Maybe Nigeria.
Well, not, but yes, I'd be delightful to have a conference in Africa. I won't say where, but we are trying to, we have, our judges come from around the world. So for the first year, we had 18 judges in many different countries. We had 2 from India, one in Kenya and one in Botswana. We're trying to expand that number. It's crazy to have just 2 people for the entire continent of Africa. But because we are also a small group, we ourselves cannot handle too many people. We don't have enough infrastructure to handle it yet. But we are trying to get more people from the underdeveloped nations of the world, which means Africa, Latin America, Asia, and well, we are growing. We hope that what we are doing is spreading what we call humanity-centered design across the world. And I want other people to develop their own ideas and carry this out. We are working with groups like the Aga Khan Foundation, which is works a lot in Africa and Asia. And we all share this notion of trying to teach these methods all across the world, so that people can take care of themselves.
Wow. You know, I'm so impressed that this thing is about people, and I love the fact that all through this conversation is just about people. It's about humanity, and even the DNDA, it's also about humanity and about people. How people can design for people, not for just design's sake or to create for creation's sake, but for people. At the core of it is humanity. So
Yes.
as you prepare for the DNDA conference, what are some of the most inspiring or impactful projects you have encountered through DNDA's awards program?
Well, there were many projects that were really wonderful. In fact, if you look on the website, we tell you about them. And the one problem I'm way worried about is that they're all relatively small, because they were done by individuals without much without much monetary support. And I would like to be able to expand their abilities and their power to impact more people. And so that is one of the concerns that we are already talking about. We are talking, the group in Singapore that is running the conference is trying to bring in more of the government and local industry to help support these activities so that we can actually impact more and more people. Now, Singapore is an interesting nation because it's quite small, and that makes it an easier nation to work with the government. But I think the principles should be able to be applied any place.
What role do you envision African designers playing in the global design community, and how can platforms like Techsculptics support this vision?
Well, you have an audience. One of the we can tell them about what we are trying to accomplish and invite people to come and join, to do projects, to apply for our awards, and also educational institutions or groups that are training people to do this work. We want to reward them as well. So one thing we need is local people who are advisors. We also need judges from around the world.
I'm so happy because I've always been talking about the fact that serving humanity is the goal of every individual, no matter what you do. Serving humanity is supposed to be your goal. It's supposed to be what you are thinking in your work, in your marketplace, anywhere, because we are here for ourselves, for each other. You know, we are here for all of us, just like the song Alicia did one time that she sang about, we are here for all of us. And that's just the truth. Every single one of us, no individual can just succeed alone on its own. You need other people. So you have to also learn to serve other people in whatever space and whatever things you do. So I'm so happy and I'm so glad that I had these conversations with you, and the audience too will hear directly from John, and they will be able to understand that this is who you are. Apart from the book they've read, they will see that this is actually who you are. This is your life. This is what you do, and this is what you think about. Not just about writing the book, but this is who you are. This is what you practice, not just what you preach. So we are so grateful. We are thankful that you are able to honor our invitation and you did this with us. And that is something that we do not take lightly at all.
Oh, thank you very much. I think you're giving too much credit to me. But,
no, I'm not. I'm not. You know, the reason is because, you know, in Africa, that's part of our culture. We actually, apart from the fact that, you know, we respect elders a lot. We give honor to elders. We actually honor people for whatever they do that helps to make things better. You know, because we are very cultural people. So maybe that's why I'm doing this. So please, I'm sorry if it's if it's too much.
Okay, well, I am an elder. I am 89 years old right now. So, thank you very much. I've enjoyed talking with you. And next time, I hope we have better sound when we start. But the problem we had was a good example because there are so many people who think technology is a solution to everything. Well, we experienced, you and I, this morning, that technology was the problem for everything, that we could not hear each other. And but even though I'm an expert at technology, I could not, there was nothing else I could do. Because the way it is designed, it is hidden from us, the things, so we don't, when something goes wrong, we don't even know where the wrong is. Is it at my end, at your end, or maybe someplace in the middle? There's no way of knowing, and this is bad. We should not have technology that is impossible to understand. And I mean impossible because it doesn't matter how good you are at technology. The technology we're using today has so many in between parts that nobody can figure out where the difficulty is.
And that's really true.
So we have to simplify things. But I'm delighted, glad we had this conversation. Techsculptics.
Yeah, thank you so much. The idea actually for Techsculptics actually came when I was thinking about what to do and how to reach out to people. Like people use technology every day, but this podcast is actually about bringing the humanity side, just like what you are doing, like bringing humanity into technology to be able to balance what technology does and how humanity can balance technology and their humanity. We shouldn't just use technology and forget our humanity. Like many people, for example, you'll be in a room, like, okay, let me give an example for parents in the home. Everybody's always on their phones. And you have kids. A child will come to a dad or a mom. Oh, mom, I want to ask a question. Then the dad will like, oh, I'm busy. Come back later. And the parent is on the phone, maybe chatting or texting or doing something. So we don't need to allow technology take over our lives such that we forget our humanity, because our humanity is what makes us. It's what brings us together and helps us become that people that will be able to create things that will be useful for humanity. So, but if technology takes over our, okay, I thought
What's
you wanted to say
interesting,
something.
but what's interesting is you said that you go home and the children want to talk to their parents, but the parents are chatting or talking to one of their friends. But what's interesting is an interesting conflict because they are using a technology, telephone, which allows them to have friends all around. Not they don't have to always be in the same place.
Yeah,
So the technology really does help us. Look, it helps you and me make contact.
yeah,
But the problem is that while I'm talking to you, I've had to shut the door, and my wife cannot talk to me. She's not allowed to on one podcast. So
yeah,
it's interesting conflict. It allows me to share ideas with you,
yeah.
but turn off my wife. And so that's an interesting conflict.
Yeah, I take that. That's really an interesting conflict. Yeah, that would be my phrase, interesting conflict. And that's really deep, an interesting conflict, because I actually I'm always grappling with, well, technology is interesting, but is it not really taking our humanity away from us in a way? Because some people are so engrossed in technology such that they don't go, they shut themselves out from the world. I don't know if you know about Web3 or the metaverse or all those things that are coming up now.
Yes, I do know.
Good. So, the metaverse, when it comes to the virtual reality, where people start using avatars to travel to different countries online and all this kind of stuff, I think it will actually be, I won't say worse than what we have today, where people shut themselves from other people and just want to be with technology. When Web3 or the metaverse becomes so popular or is open to everyone, as it were, I think
Well,
that's,
right now it's really young, even though it's been talked about. And so what it is it's a personal experience that you have, and you're isolated from everybody else. And the goal would be actually that everybody can share together and work. In fact, I'm giving a talk on this next week in the
wow,
hospitals.
wow,
Uh, Physicians are starting to use augmented reality, and but they can only see what they're doing, and I want them to be able to see all the other people around the table and the family and everybody, and that they're all working together. And I think that's possible, but not maybe it will take another 10 years. But sometimes in the early years of a technology, uh, it's very limited and not very good. But sometimes the technology that are very valuable don't look like that in the beginning.
yeah, yeah, you're right.
So it's interesting. I look at the scene behind you, which is yours, the screen. It's a big microphone. It's all about technology.
Yeah,
The microphone helps actually with large crowds. It helps people hear each other, and so it's anyway. Anyway, thank you very much. I very much enjoyed talking to you, Ben,
yes,
and
sir.
I at you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm also glad and I'm happy I did have this conversation and had this collaboration with you. And I'm looking forward to working with the team when the time comes. Thank you so much, sir.
And all your listeners too. I want to bring them in as well.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, listening, and I'm sure they will.
Your influence is made powerful by the podcast that you run. That's very important. That's again positive use of technology.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Say my regards to your wife.
I will.
Yeah, thank you.
And to your family.
Thank you, sir. I will.
Yeah, check your scene. Yeah. Hey now, what's the buzz? Tech's evolving, it's all because